The four cults that have conquered us. Life from resistance and occupied Britain. This is what we're going to look at today. This won't cause any problems, will it? Okay, four things coming up. So I started off this channel, sort of new, got it with will there be a civil war? I just got curious about this, started doing maps and stuff. And then the last one was how to prepare for a civil war. But listening to you guys' comments, thinking about it, I've come to think, have we already lost it? And maybe it wasn't so civil. Have we been conquered? Big question, right? Big question. By who? The lizard people, the aliens, all of these, actually, in a kind of funny kind of way. All of these is what's coming up. Not so much like the maps before, but something's already happened. It's going to be another long one. So if you're American, make sure you've got some snacks, British people, a cup of tea, uh, cheese ink, surrender monkeys, some cheese, I guess. So this is Throb Club again, my big throbbing video. If Throb Club is for all those who watch it all the way through, put that in the chat. Death cult occupation. Sounds like I'm not serious, right? It sounds like it's just some clickbait stuff, right? What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to absolutely take it apart, like look at it really logically and say, well, what do I mean by death cult? What do I mean by occupation? We're going to define things up front and say, yeah, here's the definitions, and then does what I'm going to say match that? Let's try and be logical about this. We don't have to be dramatic. So people might think this is sort of conspiracy theory stuff. I'd say there's actually what I'd call a conspiracy. It's the conspiracy theory that things that are true are conspiracy theories. And so many of them have been shown to be true over the years. So many of them have been shown they're happening. And of course, rich people, different elites do meet behind closed doors. They do make arrangements that are good for them and not everyone else. That's just logical, really. Equally, the name of something, the People's Democratic Republic of North Korea. Is it a democratic republic for the people? Maybe, maybe. There's something called sort of cargo cults as well, which I think is a relevant concept I'll come to later. People say, but we live in a democracy, right? Like, what do you mean occupied? It's a democracy. Well, someone once said, as long as I can pick the candidates, you can vote for who you want. Chomsky and others have said that consent is manufactured. We are told to think a certain way in the modern media environment. So, yes, we can still be occupied, even though on the surface we live in what looks like a democracy. We'll see if that's really true or not. Derek Jensen is an environmental activist. Years ago, he said if aliens or an occupying power did to us what's being done to us today by the culture we live in, we would rebel. If it was the mid 20th century Germans or aliens, if you haven't seen the classic John Carpenter film, check it out. We would say this is not okay. We'd be up in arms. This is not cool. And while I'm certainly not going to suggest we go up in arms, just to be crystal clear right from the start, I'm not encouraging insurgency or anything like that. I think there's this moral case of, if we were occupied, what would that mean ethically? We'll come to that at the end. By the way, I asked you guys, hundreds of you guys on a poll, I said, how many of you people think we're occupied? Because I thought this is kind of an extreme point of view. Maybe I'm making this up. I thought the thought came to me. I thought, is this really the case? Do other people think this? Apparently 96% of you do. I was genuinely surprised, so I'm not the only one. What does it mean then? So ChatGPT, my friend as ever, I thought I'd get some just really logical definitions. So is there a foreign military presence? Has it become a puppet state, puppet leadership? Is it economic exploitation, legal control, imposition of culture and language, international condemnation normally results like, hey, this is not okay. And of course, suppression of resistance. So if we're going to call something an occupation, and the four things I'm going to suggest, we're going to look at, do they meet these criteria? So it's fair. Have a look at these criteria up front before I kind of say, hey, here's the four groups I think. You can tell me whether these criteria are fair. They're pretty much like straight out, just Google Chat GPT. There's nothing I've played with much here. Yeah, there's a key one. No longer in charge of our own borders, governments, or economy. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar to anyone? Is it a cult? Again, we're going to look at a definition of a cult. You might think of a cult as like David Koresh, some sort of self-harming, obsessive, unpleasant football team or, group in Japan who gas people or something. Obviously, I'm not pro cult, but what is a cult? Well, actually, this has been studied quite a lot. I've read some books on this. Again, ChatGPT, more or less cut and paste here. Yeah, six or seven different things. So, a leader who's charismatic and whatever they say must be true. Strict ideology, indoctrinating people and saying this is the one true truth, exclusive truth claims, the only way to get to heaven, the only thing that's true. Total control, usually with fear tactics, authoritarian culture, us and them. Yeah, it could be with an apocalyptic element, but it's us versus them. Exploitation of people that could be financially, could be intimately, all different ways, and requiring submission to that. And again, suppression of dissent, particularly for anyone trying to leave the cult. That's a key feature of cults, actually. If they try and leave, they won't let you. It's a key feature. So I've actually come across this because I've worked in personal growth for a while, and I've thought a couple of times before, am I starting a cult? I don't think so. And I've checked. Well, no, I don't actually meet most of these criteria. So yeah, worth checking. Okay, so that's just the same list of six. In short, this is what we're going to look at for each of the four things I suggest, maybe death cults that are occupying us. This is our criteria for cult. Again, very undramatic. There's some things you might put in or take out. One I've put in actually is a sense of humor test. For me, cults and fundamentalist religions lack humor. That is a key test, I would say. Also, reality denial test when they say, you know what, this obviously real or unreal thing is the opposite. This is obviously the case. You're supposed to think this thing that's just bananas. Like, the Mormons have all these bizarre beliefs that you just go, really? Obviously, reality doesn't work that way. One I actually took out some of the ChatGPT Google definitions where a cult has to be small and it has to be new. And I thought, no, it doesn't really make sense to me because you could just be a big old cult. You can make a claim the Catholic Church is a cult just because it's big and established and old. It doesn't make it not a cult in my book. So that's the one you might find elsewhere that I've disagreed with. I don't see how that logically follows just because something's established and big. Okay, a death cult. So again, now we said a cult. What do I mean by a death cult? That harms life. Simple as worships death and it sees life really as just a precursor to death. So rather than seeing life and having value of itself, it's just a way to get to the afterlife or to secure a better afterlife. Human sacrifice, I don't see how anyone can argue with that. That if it's human sacrifice, it's a death cult and discourages reproduction. So it's, death in the sense of not encouraging life. Again, pretty, I'd say, uncontroversial criteria there. This is one of my own. I've got a model called the tetrarchy of what I think really brings life to people, and anything which damages this for me brings death. So this is the best sort of condensed version of what makes a human being well. And again, as the video goes on, this will become apparent exactly what I mean by this. All right, where are we? Stop share for a minute. Yeah, we're all good. All right, so continuing. Islam, number one. Let's jump in there and notice your response straight away when I say Islam. I had various staff members, people in my company, people in my family say, don't do this. It's an explosive topic. People lose their head over this. You wanna be careful of this one. And I thought, okay, that in itself says something. It says something right there. And I think I looked over these slides way more times than I normally do, just because I went, you know what, let's be careful here. And be careful for a couple of reasons. But people might also object and might say, well, which Islam? Shia, Sunni, mainstream, the Sufis. Well, actually, all the mainstream Islamic groups are in many ways, by any other standard, extremist. So people say, oh, there's a difference between mainstream Islam and Islamism and extremism. I'm like, well, not so much, actually. They all follow the Quran, of course, very, very closely, and the hadiths, the sayings of their prophet. Um, yeah, so I kind of don't really buy this. I mean, yeah, aside from a few Sufi groups, like for example, every mainstream Islamic groups agrees of what should be done to apostates. All the mainstream groups say kill people who leave the religion. Like individuals might differ. Individuals might say I don't believe in that, but that is mainstream Islamic doctrine. So that is what I'm going to be discussing. I'm not an expert on Islam, by the way. I've lived in Islamic countries. I've spent time in Islamic areas. I've read the Quran, of course, but there's people that know this stuff more than me. Other people would say, hey, it's fundamentalism that's the problem, right? We go up levels of development. You can look at this. This is certainly true in Christianity and Judaism. You'll meet very fundamentalist Jews. You'll meet very liberal Jews. You'll meet Jews of all kinds. And Buddhism has these turnings of the wheel, they call it, where Buddhism develops. But that's not really the case here because there's been no reformation of Islam. And Muhammad, he said, "This is it. This is the final deal. This is all you need to know. There's nothing after me." So it doesn't allow for that kind of development in the same way. And even if individuals have a different kind of level of development, these things can be tracked psychologically. And fundamentalism is what's called blue beam in a system called spiral dynamics that tracks people's values development. The system just doesn't go above that. It can't, yeah, because of the nature of it. So it is a little bit different than say Buddhism or even Judaism. And again, we're not talking about all people here. So, I said I've lived in Islamic areas of the UK, areas that were really like strong majority in Leeds, for example. I visited and spent time. I've got friends who are running the security of Al Aqsa Mosque and all sorts of things, right? So it's like I've got quite a lot of exposure here. This isn't coming from ignorance. And I do know that people can be very different. They can have different activities. I've got Turkish friends who drink and are very liberal, but that just means they're bad Muslims, right? Like that they drink alcohol. Doesn't mean that all Muslims are the same, but there is a very clear guide to what is Islamic philosophy if we're going to assess it on this criteria. Just also a good rule of thumb is if someone can't say something good about something, then they're probably not critiquing it in a fair way. Yeah, and I do think there's a certain power to Islam, a certain virility, the warrior culture. They understand that men and women are different. There's strong practices, like praying 5 times a day, fasting and Ramadan, really strong practices to develop people. The submission element of Islam, I actually really respect, and there's a strong global community around Islam. There's a traditionalist, Rene Guignon, who's actually influenced King Charles, who said this is a tradition that has a lot of going for it. And I think there's something in that. And I think if anyone can't recognize some of the strengths of Islam, its virility, for example, I'd say, be cautious of that person. They're not really giving it a fair looking at it in the round. Yeah. Obviously, everyone likes curry, but I don't think liking curry is a good enough reason to have mass immigration, for example. Yeah, people have said, "Oh, Britain's Muslimic." I know people have kind of said that. How can I put this? Hey, Muslims run everything. So, well, hang on. There's some truth to that. It certainly seems like Starmer and his government appease what they call the Islamic community. Of course, white people don't have a community for some reason. They do seem to be getting special treatment by law. Obviously, the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is Islamic. King Charles seems to be at least flirting with Islam and in certain concessions being made. So, yeah, without being paranoid or idiotic, there's quite a lot there that you could point to. And obviously, free speech around this topic is very difficult. I mean, Mr. Keir Starmer there doesn't really believe in free speech. He says we have a proud history of free speech in this country, which I think is the sad truth. And we'll find out. We'll find out how this video goes down, right? I mean, people at Charlie Hebdo, their free speech was pretty limited, wasn't it, when they got shot? But we say, okay, so 6.5% of the UK population. But when it comes to birth rates, Mohammed, top ranking birth name, some people say, I've seen different estimates that Britain could be Muslim majority by 2050, very likely by 2080 if current trends continue of birth rate and of immigration. With immigration trends, it's nearer the 2050. Without immigration, if that just stopped tomorrow, which won't happen, it'll be more like 2080 with birth rates. You've also got to look at some of the views of Muslims. So some of them, very reasonable. This graphic here was put together, I think, by British Muslims. Nearly half of British Muslims, though, support Hamas or an actual terrorist organization who have the most appalling beliefs I'll come to. And also nearly half of them think being gay should be illegal. This is just two facts. Yeah, three-quarters of them don't believe that there was atrocities committed by Hamas in Israel a couple of years ago. When surveyed, their beliefs are pretty horrific. And there's surveys on this. You can Google this if you want. Just Google beliefs of British Muslims. Of course, mainstream Islam is big, Islamism, kind of terrorism within that is a much smaller group. So the only issues with the numbers, right? So it's 3.9 million Muslims in the UK. If only 1% of them were a problem, that's a lot of people. And we know that over 1,000 British Muslims went to fight for ISIS, for example, and that was incredibly inconvenient for them to go across the globe and, from Luton or wherever. to raise money for that, learn a language perhaps. So yeah, I mean, this is still large numbers, and in terms of influence and impact. I mean, one question I just have around Islam straight up, if we get aside if it's a cult or not, is it true? Right? Is it true? Nobody asks, is it true for some reason? With religion, we're not supposed to ask that, but like the night journey of Muhammad on a flying horse, they've got weird beliefs. You can't mix salt water with fresh water. Why birds like jinn? These weird beliefs in spirits, talking rocks, weird beliefs that painting's sinful, that dogs are horrible, chess is wrong, Satan lives in your nose, and of course some less funny ones around, like say Muhammad had a wife who was very, very young by any standards of modernity. So some of these beliefs are either just completely ridiculous or morally repugnant, and there's no doubt about that. So is it a cult? Is it a cult? It's a big word, right? And I said, no, it's an established religion. How dare you? You're insulting Islam. Well, let's just ask, does it meet the criteria? We've already got some criteria, so let's ask, not a cult, not a cult. Let's ask ourselves, charismatic leader, yeah? Where are we? Infallible charismatic leader. I've put that one in orange, meaning it might not mean it because it doesn't today. It did has a founder, then it would be in green if it said founder. Yeah, that the way people talk about Muhammad is infallible beyond all measure. It's just given some of the things he did, his behaviors, it's just utterly bizarre to me that he would be seen as infallible and, certainly charismatic, very successful as a warlord in the Arabian Peninsula. But because there's no current single charismatic leader of Islam, I put that one in orange. Certainly has a strict ideology of the final and only truth. Sharia law covers every aspect of Islamic life, like what to do if you have semen on your clothes, like tiny little how to wash your hands, all great, like really in-depth stuff. It's one of the most controlling life submissions you could imagine. I mean, that's the point. There's definitely an us versus them. Yeah. And one of the quotes I found is that it normalizes superiority and dehumaniation of kafir. So that's like non-Muslims. Yeah. It's definitely got apocalyptic element. It's definitely exploitative, right? Like in behaviors, but also like the jizya. This is the tax. So if people live in Islamic countries that aren't Islamic, they can submit to the tax or they can be killed. There, you're all convert. They're the options, okay? And it's literal submission in terms of exploitation and absolutely suppression of dissent. Well, again, we'll see by people's reaction to this online. You see this as well. People who leave the religion, apostates, the normal standard Islamic take on that is they should be killed. Yeah, they certainly there's often they should be cut off from the family. I've heard that many times as well. And you listen to ex-Muslims talk about this stuff. Is there a values clash here? Yeah, it's very strange to see the sort of end the patriarchy signs behind these girls in a school that the Queen is visiting. Um, well, there's certainly some around awful treatments, like this guy being thrown off a building here by IS, relating to sexuality, stoning people to death, the possibility of jihad, tolerance for other religions. I mean, age of consent stuff. I put that table on there to be fair, because there's other countries where age of consent is also very low, but it's 13 in Iran, which is considered one of the most Islamic countries. And there's many Islamic countries where there are child brides. That comes from the life of Muhammad. They don't believe in the separation of church and state either, which in Britain are officially together but effectively separated. And it is not just a religion but a political ideology that believes in political advancement through conquest. So there is a values clash here. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, so it's political. It's not just religious. It's not open to change. Like I mentioned the Reformation or Buddhism has, for example. But if I was again say something positive, someone can't say something positive, they're not looking at things funny. It's not ethnic. So there are religions that see things ethnically. But while there are Arab Muslims, for example, there are Indonesian Muslims, African Muslims of various nationalities. So it doesn't have that like ethnic superiority. So that's something in its favor in case you think I'm being completely unfair here. Other people know this better than me. If I've made mistakes here, do correct me. I could be wrong. And I think Douglas Murray or the late great Christopher Hitchens. Yeah, it's there are people that know more than me, particularly ex-Muslims. You talk to ex-Muslims, you'll see a lot. So, correct me if I've made any mistakes. It certainly doesn't pass the humor test. Imagine if they made the Book of Mormon around Islam. Like, no show in London would dare do that. No theatre would dare play it. Even South Park got in trouble. And again, the fragility of shooting people who make cartoons. It's really pathetic. Is it a death cult? Okay, so it fails the humor test. I think it clearly has the cult qualities, even if it's big. So government website says Islam is responsible for the worst UK terrorism. If we look at the worst things that have happened in the UK, there's various attackers, kids killed, Ariana Grande, 7/7. It's all Islam. There's just no doubt about it. It's only one group of people that do this stuff in the UK, at least for now. Yeah, there's from the MI5. Islamic terrorism, the most significant terrorism in the UK by volume. 75% of the threat actually is done by 7% of the population. Maybe the 775 figure should be better known. I mean, that's just stats. It's just stats. This is straight from a government website. Again, to be fair, there's terrorist incidents there in the UK. You see Northern Ireland, so of course, there's been terrorism done by Christians in the past, and the biggest terrorist attack in the US was done by this guy. And again, don't approve of any of this, to be clear. Not a fan of violence of any kind, but particularly this sort. Yeah, so it is possible that other groups do terrorism as well, but you know, there's a bloody trend, isn't there? Let's be honest. Okay. If we're going to assess its death qualities or its love of death, let's be fair, right? Rather than give opinions, we should look at the founder, the history, and the key text. Okay. So Muhammad Ali says, Islam is a religion of peace, not violence. Is it? Let's look at these three things. So the founder was a warrior. He wasn't, very different than the Buddha or Jesus, for example. Therefore, when you meet the unbelievers, smite at their necks at length when you have thoroughly subdued them, bind the captives firmly. Therefore is a time for either generosity or ransom. It's pretty clear, is it not? I mean, certainly there's been a history of conquest through the Arabian Peninsula right up into Spain. This is how Islam was spread. It wasn't spread peacefully through convincing people, it was spread through violence. This is just historically true. Hamas, in their own words. You can read some of these quotes by Hamas. They're absolutely appalling, as there were behaviors recently in terms of like kidnapping kids, killing kids, how they brainwash kids in Gaza is just disgusting, just disgusting. It's really a definite, is it just Hamas? Hamas is definitely a death cult. There's no doubt about it. In their own words, they say, we love death and our enemies love life. In their own words. Okay, what about this? The penalty for those who wage war against Allah and his messenger. By the way, wage war here means can just disagree with, by the way, in the actual context here. It's hard to it's hard to argue with some of these, isn't it? You look at some of these and you go, this doesn't look good. I didn't find this in the Buddhist scripture. Kill them wherever you find them. But people argue about it. Like this guy on YouTube, for example, says, well, this is what we really mean. It's from this particular context, and this is why. I'm not convinced, to be honest. The ones of these I've seen, I'm not convinced. But I do appreciate. I'm not a scholar of this. There are people who are that might be able to set me straight. I tell you what, though, the punishments for things, whether it be not just Islamic State, Saudi Arabia, absolutely mainstream. This YouTuber here, bottom right, gave us this list, and it's like these are the for the death penalty, heresy, right? That's stuff you say every day. Anything gay, adultery. That's just unmarried sex, right? That's me gone. Yeah, it's not that different. I mean, the Islamic State might crucify you, or Saudi Arabia might only kill you for banditry, but it's not that different. So basically, all you mofo's would be dead under Islamic law. All of you. Yeah, pretty much everyone watching this. Also, I thought this was interesting. There, you can pause and watch this if you want. It's the comparison between when Islam didn't have military strength when it did. And I think that says something. This very interesting comparison, because obviously there's a lot of contradictions in the Quran, no matter what they say. There's some things that sound very peaceful or merciful, and others not so much. So I don't know. How do you make sense of it? And yeah, there's positives in there against domestic violence, for example. Equally, I've got a quote from Leviticus there, which is pretty violent. So again, let's compare like with like. There's violent quotes in the Bible too. I think they're generally, in Christianity at least, seen as superseded by the more chilled approach of Jesus. So yeah, there might be a difference there. This is an interesting one because it's often the middle bit's often missed. This is a good example of how you've got to be careful with this because sometimes this is given whoever kills a soul as if he had severed mankind, but they miss the middle part. And then it's like, well, hang on a minute. This is actually about killing people. So it's a good example of how you can be tricky with quotes by not quoting fully or, not knowing the context. Again, I'm not an expert. If somebody is, maybe they can fill me in the chat if I've made mistakes there. I could be wrong. And what I'm not wrong about, though, is the history. That's pretty clear. There's a history of conquest. I was talking to my Indian employee about this, and, he just still to this day, he's like, be careful of these people. 100 to 230 million killed in the Muslim invasions of India. That is some good numbers, even by bloody Maoist, Stalinist kind of numbers. Unbelievable. Huge numbers, huge numbers. And yes, the Crusades were justified. They were defensive actions, essentially. There's videos on that on YouTube if you're interested. So, yeah, there's no doubt about the history. We love death like our enemies love life. Wow. Former Hamas Prime Minister. Crazy, huh? To me, that is yeah, there's a love of death there. And the idea that this life isn't important, it's the next life that's important, where you get your virgins on your laptops or whatever. This is very key, very clear. Also, the difference between believers and non-believers, big differences there. Them and us mentality, absolutely, that's cult-like. Big one for me that shows a big one for cult. If you look at Ayaan Hirsi Ali's work or ex-Muslims of North America, leaving is very difficult in terms of family cutting you off, in terms of death threats. It's one of the worst things you can do in Islam. And to me, that's pure cult-like. Okay, so harms life. Yes, we do see that. Worships death. It does seem that way at times, doesn't it? Certainly, certain factions, those that are more Islamic, as it were. Then again, not all Muslims. We're not talking about all Muslims here. We're talking about Islam as a creed, not individuals who may be lovely people. Life is the only way to death. Yeah, human sacrifice. Oh, misspelled that. It does seem so. It does seem so. Discourages reproduction. No, I'd say they don't meet that criteria of discouraging reproduction. They like reproduction. So let's be fair. Yeah, there are some serious issues here. There are some serious issues in the UK today with this group. There's no doubt about it. Often it's justified, actually. People will come to this later. There's sort of woke justification saying, they're just getting revenge, and we deserve it as evil white people. So there's that justification that's in there. So this is my take. Do they harm life? Well, maybe, because I mean, there is strength in Islam. There is a virility to it. It wouldn't have spread so much if it didn't help people in many ways. So I'm going to give that a maybe. Worship's death, I'm going to give a maybe because I think it really depends on some groups clearly do, while others simply much more life. Um, Life only awaits death. Definitely has that feature. Human sacrifice, again, yes, people blowing themselves up and stuff, but it's not like they're killing, they're sacrificing to gods like the Aztecs or something. So I don't know, not for that. And they don't meet that fifth criteria. So again, I'm trying to be fair here. They don't meet that fifth criteria. So in terms of a death cult, I think it's yes to a cult, maybe to a death cult. And again, it depends on the group. In terms of how they treat life in the UK specifically. So I think there is a degradation of traditional Christian spiritual life in the UK as a result of it. In terms of embodiment, they're pretty anti-body. Muslims are pretty like seeing the body as sinful, must be covered up. I don't think that's very life enhancing. They have their own strong communities, but it's certainly, the lack of integration. I think there are real problems there in how Muslims in the UK have not integrated and how that has damaged British communities. And in some cases, the harm that has been done to thousands of white British girls as a result of Muslim gangs. They are not just gangs, they are Muslim gangs. That's part of the justification, preying on working class white girls. And the people that allowed that will not be forgiven. That is not something that should go unremembered. In terms of the effect on the environment, Muslims don't really seem to have any particular love for the British countryside, so that's there. So I'd say sort of pretty harmful to life in Britain generally. And again, this isn't an excuse to be nasty to any individuals. This isn't saying that individuals are bad people. They certainly fail the humour test, and we will see that in responses to this video, no doubt. reality denial, like seawater and fresh water can't mix. I think the biggest reality denial, Douglas Murray points out, is that Islam thinks it has like the one final answer for mankind, but most Islamic countries aren't doing very well, are they? Sort of scientifically or in terms of many, indicators, unless they've got oil, they're not doing great, most of them. And I think the reality of that is a big reality denial. Yeah, splitting the moon in half, the problems with cousin marriages is a big one in the UK, and riding the horse on the night flight. I mean, just it's just bizarre. So in terms of reality denial, which is a key feature of cults, that is all there. I remember once years ago, I had a date with a Saudi Arabian girl. Literally, she was beautiful, but she tried to justify all these things, and it was really odd. It was really odd. This intelligent, university educated woman, what was she, junior doctor? And she was away from Saudi Arabia, so she was unveiled, she was going on dates with British guys, living the good life. And the justifications were, you wouldn't believe it. Anyway, I won't tell you the rest of that story. So let's try and be fair. Is it to do with stages of development that religions go through these stages? The problem is that in what's called fowler stages of development, Islam is stuck in the mythic, literal stage. It can't really get past that in its nature. So yes, there may be commonalities with Christianity. There may be, shared people of the book kind of stuff, but yeah, it's stuck in a stage of development. So have we been conquered? It's an interesting one because other people invited them here. Other people have allowed them here. So is it really on them? Is it really a conquest? Though, Islam does see the world in these terms. It does see the world in terms of conquering the world for Islam. This is a world view that is there. Foreign military presence. Well, it's definitely fighting age men. So I'm going to tick that one. Um, Loss of sovereignty, puppet leadership. It does seem like our leadership are being puppeted in some way. Economic exploitation from the dominating power, yeah, in terms of like benefits for people that come over from Somalia, etc. Legal control, yes, we've just changed British law so to make this second tier, this two-tier policing. Imposition of culture and language, definitely. You see Khan putting the Ramadan lights on in London. International condemnation, yes, Mr. Musk, for example, recently. And suppression of resistance, you better believe it. Oh, I'm going to have a good time after this next time I visit Leeds, aren't I? Yeah. People literally said, don't make this video. They will kill you. And it's like, what other group would kill someone for a YouTube video? What other group would I worry about in that way? It's like, that says something. It says something. So, are they a cult? Yes. Yes, I'm sorry, but yes. Death Cult, maybe. Trying to be fair there, trying to be fair there. Occupying, yes, definitely. But they're the occupying army or force. They're not leading that. Okay, to jail with you. So if you look at all the weird British laws about Islamophobia, a strange word that should only apply to a mental illness, a phobia, it's not a mental illness to dislike the ideas of Islam. They're essentially a client group, right? So this is this idea in elite theory of the tops using the bottoms against the middle. So groups that would otherwise have no power, the Soviets did this, are given power by whoever's at the top, in order to disadvantage the others, the people in the middle. So it's like they know they don't have much power without the support. So this is what a client group is, and you will see them sort of block voting for Labour, for example. You will see them having support of the upper classes from Prince Charles, definitely from economic groups, which really bend over backwards for them, from various other groups we'll talk about today. So again, this is not an excuse to be unkind to another. I think the sort of compassion of people can be weaponized in the sense of like not speaking up for things that are awful and illegal, like the Rotherham stuff, for example. But none of this is an excuse to go pick on, Ahmed at the shop, who's just a skinny Pakistani British guy who's trying to get by and sell his wares or whatever. It's not an excuse to be a jerk to anyone for anything illegal. Let me be crystal clear. Okay, and just to anyone Islamic watching this, if you're upset and you kill me, that kind of proves me right. Okay, it kind of proves me right. So I will be dead, but I'll be right, just so you know. So don't do that, please. I appreciate that. Yeah, the fact that I have to add that is so surreal, isn't it? It's so surreal. Okay, so that's group one. Blimey, how are we doing? All right, group two. Woke. You knew it was gonna be here. You knew it was coming. Group two, the woke. So, what is woke? What is woke? People say, oh, there's no definition. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. It's neo-Marxism. It's intersectional Marxism. What is a section? It's a group of people who are supposedly oppressed or oppressing. All right. There's a very clear definition of it. If you want to go into it, you can spend hours on that, but it doesn't mean nothing. Is it a cult, though? Is it a cult? Well, not a cult. Not a cult. Is it a cult? Well, it's a sort of cult of victimhood. You can say that. Yeah, cult of victimhood. That's the first thing. Um, does it have a charismatic leader? I'd say no. It doesn't meet that criteria. It does have ideology, authority, control, us and them, definitely exploits people, particularly children and young people, and definitely suppresses dissent. So it meets the criteria. Let's go through it. Has priests. Matt Walsh proved there's no relation, by the way. I'm a Welsh, he's a Welsh, but we are not related. That's Robin DeAngelo, absolute grifter. Yeah, some of these racist baby Abraham X Kendi places in Berkeley. Some might say even the Pope's kind of gone a bit woke, but it definitely has priests. It has saints. Oh my God, put in George Floyd, you come up with all these like saint-like images. It's really surreal. Or how people, in some ways, even like women are considered saintly by woke. Women can't do anything wrong, apparently. There's no such thing as toxic femininity. And how they treat people who had really dodgy lives. Like Gandhi had weird things going on with his nieces and nephews, and Martin Luther King definitely did some dodgy things. Look it up. There's a video by the Lotus Eaters where you can see this. They have their own special language. It's so bizarre, isn't it? Chest feeding was one I came across the other day. It's so bizarre. Someone talking about their lived experience as opposed to their dead experience. They've got all these weird words and new sins as well, right? Like new ways you're dead naming. It's like, it's not a sin, it's new. So new sins, of course, the original sin, they've got original sin is to be a straight white male. They have these struggle sessions. I was cancelled or tried to cancel me a few years back, and then I messaged the person that did a blog and I said, "Look, can you take this blog down? It's been a few years. It's just kind of harmful. Can you just take it down?" And they said, "Yes, if you do a public confessional where we you admit your white supremacy." I was like, "Oh my God, it's like this Maoist nightmare." They do have this way of excommunicating people. It is hard to leave, and if you do leave, they will not forgive you. They're not big on forgiveness generally, I would say. Douglas Murray talks about that. And they do have this utopian vision for the future, but they actually have a utopian in this life, not in an afterlife. It's kind of a lot of it's Christian. Other people have said this better than me, but they're using a slave morality or sort of reworked Christianity where the kind of guilt tendency of Western culture is weaponized. And it's interesting when guilt cultures like Christianity and wokeism, which is sort of pseudo new Christianity, meet shame cultures like the Islamic culture. That's where they really kind of, we have problems. The shame cultures take advantage of the guilt cultures, essentially. Other people have talked more about this. Various comedians, the grievance studies thing, where they had talking about dog parks. Obviously Peterson, Jonathan Haidt has a very centrist voice. I've been on trigonometry, and they talk about this ad nauseum. They talk about it all the time. Yeah, various people have talked about this. I feel like it's boring at this point, but it is a religion in many ways, and Jonathan Haidt and many others have pointed that out. It's also got corporate sponsorship. Yeah, or until very recently. This is slightly bizarre. By the way, in Arab countries, a lot of these guys don't do their rainbow flags, but it's like, why is my Barclays app rainbow colored? I don't get it. Like, what? How does that make me money? Like, what is? It's very odd. So this sort of weird kind of corporate sponsorship is part of it. Is it a death cult though? So it's definitely a cult. It's definitely a cult. All this stuff is cult-like, very cult-like. Well, some people say it's just decadence, it's like the sort of fall of Rome. Is that Nero? I think I put on there. Paglia talks about this. He's a feminist. Fertility goes down in periods of decadence. Maybe it's just that. Okay, could be just that, rather than being a death cult. This is something that happens as empires age and falls, and we are in a period of decline in sort of great Western or great American empire. But they don't seem to be very big on reproduction, right? Like what's not on the rainbow flag is white babies, white people, anyone who can reproduce. It's all non-reproductive groups. And you might say, well, yeah, but gay people can adopt. Yeah, but come on, come on. You know what I'm talking about. These are non-reproductive groups. Yes, single, they seem to like single mothers or gay couples adopting or whatever. I don't know. Maybe there's a place for that, maybe not. Personally, let's look at the actual data. As far as I can see, being a single mother is a form of child abuse. Some people are forced into it, but to choose it, the outcomes for children are absolutely disastrous. And saying men are trash and men aren't needed, or like, I don't think nature made a mistake in inventing men and women as a coupling unit. I don't think so. I could be wrong. Maybe like every other culture in human history before woke came along and solved the problem of humanity. I'm wrong, and all the other cultures are wrong, but maybe not. Is this also about sterilization? There's no doubt about that. Mm. There's a sterilization agenda there, which is profoundly anti-life, profoundly anti-life. The woke culture is profoundly anti-life. Cutting someone's breasts off, what could be more anti-life than that? And that's the film version. I'm going to warn you, guys. I'm going to warn you what's coming next. Okay, I googled some pictures and they're pretty horrific, and you might not want to see this, particularly you gentlemen watching this. So yeah, this is pretty nasty. Yeah, no, the pictures I googled, there's no way I can show you on YouTube, but you do not want that. You do not want that. You can say, yeah, but what about life? They're encouraging people to come to have sex with people, and they like porn and they like interracial couples, I think. Yeah, not good. Obviously, I've censored some of the words for YouTube on that graph on the right from Sweden, but the rates of SA and of refugees correlate very strongly in Sweden. Despite the government's best efforts to suppress this, there are stats in many countries on the ethnicity related, of course, to immigration and to Islamic countries of people doing SA. And yeah, you might say that woke culture is empowering to women, but in such an unhealthy way. I can't believe the sexuality it's encouraging. The OnlyFans culture is in any way wholesome or life. It's not leaning towards life, let's be honest. They utterly fail the humor test. They think Donald Trump's not funny. They cry and scream at the moon. The sort of pompousness. I can't believe I still have to protest this shit. The arrogance of them. And they literally have come after comedians time and time again. Yes, so almost at their core is a humorlessness. And again, let's not be unkind to individual people. Don't beat up the gay guy around the corner. I'm not encouraging violence. Ay, ay, ay. The humorlessness again. But if you haven't seen the Transformers comments with Megatron, I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. They fail the humor test. Reality denial as well. Boy, do they fail this one. Whether it be what men are women, women are men, identify as a wolf, they just seem to be out of touch with human nature. Like, even a leftist friend of mine, I spoke to him and said, "What does the right do well?" He said, "Well, they have a more realistic view of human nature." It seems like the woke left, the authoritarian left, really just doesn't like facts. It doesn't even believe in the concept of truth. Actually, it's deep postmodernism is no such thing as truth. So there's not even reality. It's denying the concept of reality, even though there's a contradiction to say there's no such thing as truth, because that in itself is a truth statement, right? It thinks that all immigrants are lawyers and doctors. It denies the reality of some of the awful things done by the SA gangs. Again, I'm just saying that for YouTube. The denial of reality is absolutely bonkers. You can identify as an attack helicopter. So this is just the biggest fail. Like, in terms of them not being a cult, huge fail. Yeah, in terms of life, again, they deny the reality of God. They deny the body, which deny our embodiment. They want to transcend the body. Dugan talks about this. Ecology, well, they're kind of hippies, so maybe not so bad on that front. But yeah, denying at least 3 out of 4 of the core connections that make us well as people. So cult. Um, it's almost an old hat to talk about woke now. I feel like I'm flogging a dead horse. Academic Agent, for example, says it's being put away. It's served its purpose. It's everywhere. It's already allowed mass migration. It's changed the whole culture. Maybe it was pushing too hard against kind of capitalism in a way. It was becoming unprofitable for the powers that be. it's causing problems for the kind of money power. So yeah, maybe it's been put away now, and I think very quickly we're going to see the majority of people who never really believed in it. This is sort of activist priest cast of 10%, but most people just cowardly went along with it. I think it will be viewed as the most cowardly. Our children were being sterilized, our children were being made mentally ill by it. And we just went along with it because we didn't want to be cancelled. What does that even mean? The fear of what? Of what? It's not like the Islamists will actually kill you, right? These people aren't going to kill you. They might try and socially kill you. And there's some people that have to worry about their jobs and whatever. I've lost some clients because I've lost some partners, business partners, but just lost a book publication recently because of bloody DEI. I might name and shame them soon after I get legal advice. But it's, really. Anyway, so maybe it's been put away. It served its purpose. As I said, it's justified already some of the awful things that have been done by the former group. Um, yeah, does it harm life? Yes. Does it worship death? Yes. It doesn't have this view of an afterlife, so we can't give it 5 out of 5. Human sacrifice, yeah, babies. Absolutely, babies. Just galore. The abortion, it endorses abortion in a way which is absolutely demonic, frankly. Women screaming for abortion rights like it was just the best thing ever, as opposed to, you could argue like it's necessary, but it's awful, but absolutely disgusting. It definitely discourages reproduction on a number of levels, the cultural level, men are trash, right through to the actual sterilizing of people. Still everywhere though, isn't it? Still in the institutions, still in my publisher, still in mainstream institutions. It can take a long time to wash its way out of institutions. Increasingly, I think corporations don't believe in it. People getting rid of pronouns in the bio kind of thing. Obviously, Trump's made a big impact here. The woke mind virus, as Elon calls it, is being sort of washed out. I think it will go relatively quickly, but it will take a while in some of the institutions, and it's already done the damage. There's a mentally ill generation of young people as a result. By the way, if you are still fighting woke people, Thomas Sowell's kind of questions, this is related to his questions. It's like, show me the data on that. It's like, okay, women are less violent than men. Okay, what's the data on domestic violence amongst lesbian couples? Oh, it's higher than amongst gay couples that are men. Oh, interesting. Okay, and who gets to say? Who gets to say who's oppressed? That's the ultimate power, really. Who gets to say who's in that group? What will that actually look like? If someone says we want equity, what does that mean? Oh, you're going to tax everyone. What are you going to do? And compared to what? Compared to who? Okay, so if you say, oh yeah, Western culture is terrible. Okay, compared to who? British Empire was terrible. What, compared to the Aztecs or the Mongols? Who are we comparing them to? Yeah. Usually it's some fantasy in the future. So Thomas Sowell, these are related to his questions, are really helpful if you are battling these Muppets. But what you find battling them is it's not really about logic. It's very feminine, very emotional. It's really a cult. You'll see they completely aren't interested in logic or reason. Have we been conquered by them? Maybe. Again, I think it's being put away. The foreign military presence. I mean, we don't really have like, gay militaries doing over us. I guess we could say that they've infiltrated the military. Puppet leadership does seem the leadership kowtow to them. They say diversity is our strength. Based on what? I don't know. Economic exploitation, definitely. The positive discrimination, as it were, absolute piss take. The legal control, absolute piss take. Imposition of culture and language, I could underline that one, making us all talk in a certain way. Again, internationally, it's been condemned by Elon and various other people. And will they suppress resistance? Absolutely. Are you allowed to leave the cult? No. So yeah, definitely a cult. Definitely a death cult. And are they occupying us? We could say they're sort of part of what's going on, but are they really the people doing it? I don't know. I doubt it. Okay, what's up next? Group three, the death cult, corporate greed. Group three. Mm. She'll say, it's selling the sacred. There's a travesty of money. All religions have pointed to this, I think, all traditional religions, selling the sacred. We're being asked to prostitute ourselves. So I'm not just talking about normal trade or capitalism in its healthiest form, but the cult of money, the pursuit of greed above all things, the prostituting of ourselves, the selling of what's sacred, the destroying of our lives and our minds and our families for money. That is what makes me say international finance is a cult. It's transnational. It's absolutely transnational at this point. Are we in charge of our own country or are we occupied by transnational corporations? It's interesting. I was playing with it, the idea the other day. I forget who I get it from. I think maybe it was Morgoth. Was what if Amazon invaded Belgium? It's like, what would that even mean? There's a very different sort of rule set. They're within the countries, they're between the countries. They have more power than the countries in many ways. Countries haven't existed for a while. Any reality is perhaps my take. So international finance, the illusion of nation states. So yeah, we're not really Britain's not really a strong state by any means today. If you look at mass migration, for example, it's just a supply and demand issue. Houses are very expensive in England because it's a crowded island with not many houses that can be built, and a lot of people. So of course, the powers that be, the money power wants more people because it keeps wages down and prices up. It's that simple. Supply and demand. It's not like everyone that's coming over on the boats is suddenly becoming, forming companies and becoming taxpayers. Don't be silly. There are studies on the economic impact of migrants, and they are negative. You can keep Woods talking about this in Ireland, for example, but it's just obviously a supply and demand issue. So yes, if you own stuff, you want that stuff to be more expensive. If you're in housing, for example, you rent houses, rents go up or wages go down. It's interesting that the sort of mono party, the Conservatives haven't conserved anything. They are the party of business in the UK. They don't care what color you are. Look, they don't mind if you're supposed to be a Hindu or Muslim or anything else. What they care about is money. Okay, Farage is disgusting, slug grifter, smug, absolutely insincere, controlled opposition, mofo. The same. They care about money. That is it. The only color that matters is green to these people. Okay, is that an excuse to be unkind? Fucking at this point, I'm thinking maybe. All right, obviously, don't do anything illegal. I'm saying that clearly, but there has to be some opposition to these Muppets. Okay, merchant class. So, in a sort of traditionalist way of looking at things, putting them, this is a Japanese version and a Hindu version, putting the merchants in charge of the world is an absolutely terrible idea, rather than warriors or priests in charge of things. So, putting the merchants in charge, in terms of where they would be in this, maybe they're not actually at the where should they be in this? It's kind of a Marxist view of things, but yeah. Certainly, we're talking about slave labor at this point, right? If you've seen an Amazon warehouse, they, by the way, Whole Foods, who owned by Amazon, did a study and found that mixed ethnic groups don't unionize as much. They can't even speak to each other sometimes, right? Can't even communicate. So it's absolutely in this kind of techno feudalism's interests, as Yanis Malakalopoulos says. If you look at like a delivery driver and Uber driver, how have they got any chance of advancement in the society? I would say no. Others have pointed this out too. What that means to me is they're effectively slaves. Like a slave class is being imported for this ruling elite, and the sort of British working class have been left behind because they're not as pliable, let's say. The real horror of this cult, though, is materialism. That all that matters is stuff. It's not the normal view of humanity. If you want the normal view of humanity as animism, Josh Schreier points this out. The view that all there exists is stuff, and the purpose of life is to get stuff. That's a horrific view spiritually. It's an objectifying view, we could say. This idea of you just work, consume, buy, and die. This is Adbusters. And it's a spiritually bankrupting point of view of the cult. Many of us have felt like, this is our lives. These people, women working Excel spreadsheets for strangers who hates them, burning themselves out while their hormones go crazy instead of having a happy family life with kids. It makes no sense. Yeah, this is a death cult. There is no doubt about it. That what is worshipped is consumerism, as Banksy, who's a bit of a lefty, points out here. It creates this narcissism where we decenter God from the center of the world and we put ourselves in the center. The consumer, it becomes the God at the center of the world. Is it a cult? Is it a cult? I mean, you could say there's no charismatic leader in the consumer culture, but there is you because of the narcissism, right? strict ideology. Well, the ideology is more. So it's not like it's a religious ideology. The ideology is very simple. It's materialism. So I'd probably give that a tick and just more of everything. Absolutely authoritarian control. It's locked down. Us versus them. Well, I mean, in terms of like classes, yes, we could go into that. Absolutely, are people exploited by it. People are absolutely exploited by the money power. And it definitely suppresses dissent. Like all the newspapers agree with what's all the political parties, all the mainstream media. So absolutely, there's a cult like faith in it, and the market of worshipping money, which traditional spirituality is always warned against. This is the religion, right? This is the religion of our world. The American dream that anyone can get there, which of course is nonsense for most people. There's beauty in that dream, of course, but is it a reality now? Is it reality? I would argue not. Like the mono party, right? Who do they work for? Look at these guys. They're all together. They all know each other. They're all mates, whether it's they went to Eton and Oxbridge and Cambridge, whether it's Bohemian Grove. The newspapers are all saying the same thing. I saw this during COVID. They had the exact same line all around the world. In fact, I was traveling through most of COVID and I was like, why are the rules the same everywhere? What's going on? It seems to be an international something going on. It's just money. Are there priests? Well, there's like Adam Smith there or Friedman, Rand. You could say there's priests. That's a bit cult-like. Is it a death cult, though? That is the key question. Yeah, I mean, environmentally, it's destroying us. Even if you're not a big fan of global warming, you'll at least see that it's polluting the rivers of Great Britain, for example. It's destroying the town centers to make them look ugly. Look what consumer capitalism does to the aesthetic of Britain. It's disgusting. So yeah, the absolutely not valuing life in any way, as far as I can tell, destroying us psychologically. The working mother's a disaster. Who are we kidding? That was a terrible idea. Absolutely destroying us psychologically. Commuter life, online life, all the forms of modern work life are just absolutely abominations to the human soul. Yeah, Dugan, who I don't like politically in many ways, because Ukraine stances, he points us out that it's, since industrialization, people were moved away from communities, moved away from families. Children had to be educated by the state, which is very convenient for the state. And it's destroying all bonds of love and loyalty other than profit, piece by piece. That is the march of what some people call progress, and I don't. And this is why people feel alienated, right? It's the illegal aliens. Yes, sure, it's the people from abroad, but it's this feeling of like aliens running the show who are more like the myth of the vampire is a psychopath, essentially. And we feel like zombies in this world. This is where some of these symbols come from. Again, if aliens were doing to us what consumer culture is doing to us, would we object? I think we would. But even at this point, we're self-exploited. There's Gary V, who I quite like, crushing it, hustle culture. It's, Bang Chul Han, is it? Korean philosopher in the middle, burnout society, speaks very beautifully of how we're self-exploited. The brainwashing's gone so deep in this cult that we don't even need to be whipped anymore, right? We whip ourselves. And this is how the cultures run. Buddhism talks about the three poisons. This is the nature of our economic system. This is the very driver of our economic system. The seven deadly sins, linked to the social medias, these are the drivers, the grasping, the aversion. You're in that fight or flight response, fighting with people on X, fighting in the comments right now in the YouTube. Yeah, the ignorance. We're being like Google's a way to hide things. It's not a way to show things. AI is a way to distort reality, not show it. The grasping of, I've got to get a body like him. I've got to get her as my girlfriend. The constant craving and lust that we see on the apps. This is where it starts to sound a bit satanic, right? Interesting. And just seeing people as a resource, nature as a resource, disposable means to ends rather than ends in themselves, as Kant might have said. This is the view of consumer culture. This is the cult of materialism that is so normal we don't even see that it's a fucking disaster. This is in the culture, right? The Andrew Tates with their sports cars. What could be more materialistic than that Muppet? Yeah, how to be successful, how to hustle, hormozes. You got to just work harder, work 12, 20 hours a day. This the rappers who are with their bling, you know. It's just it's pathetic. It's just childish, materialistic, and frankly demonic way of looking at the world. So does it harm life? Absolutely. Absolutely. Does it worship death? You could say so. I think that one's arguable. Again, it's not looking for an afterlife, so we can't put that on it. Human sacrifice? Yeah, it's sacrificing all of us, sacrificing our time, our energy, our money, our attention. That's the biggest human sacrifice of consumer culture. And it's definitely no one's reproducing. We're all too tired. We're all too nihilistic to fucking have anything to reproduce for. Consumer culture is a death cult. It's killing us all individually and as a society. And yet we can't seem to back down from it. We can't seem to, people say, oh, we have to have immigration because it's good for the economy. Like somehow that's the only thing that matters. Very strange. Does it pass the humor test? Sometimes. Sometimes the capitalists, I think, are laughing at us rather than with us. But yeah, it can have a sense of humor. So maybe it's not a total cult in that sense. Reality denial, absolutely. Like it literally relies on distraction and entertainment as reality denial. Absolutely denies on that we're just not looking at reality. Everything's fine. Yeah. Every time you walk past a homeless person, it's just like horror of that should hit us. We don't need that. We've got enough to go around. We say, well, it's their fault. They're on drugs. Something maybe I've been on drugs. It's not easy. Yeah, I've been an addict. I've still got some compassion for that. But the denial that it's working. I mean, you look out the door. Does it look like it's fucking working? Really? Okay. And what's going on here? We can see the cost of living going up. We can see how it's more and more expensive just to get food and electricity in so many places, so many places. And again, we've got a bit, the tops are using the middles against the bottoms. In this case, they're saying, "Oh, that immigrant stole your cookie." Well, the immigrant did steal your cookie, but it's also the bank has got a big pile of cookies. So yes, the immigrant did steal a cookie as well. So let's get that one right. The middle class is shrinking. I think this is going to be interesting because as the middle class shrinks, and I'm in the top 5 or 10% tax earners in the UK, and I still feel the squeeze here. I still feel the squeeze. My electricity bill's like £3,000 a year or something for my house. It's mental, mental. So I think as that happens, as that middle class starts to feel what the working class have been going through for a while, as techno feudalism kicks in and the middle class, replaced by AIs, etc., might find more resistance to this. We might find people who are sort of at least educated enough to make some intelligent retorts to it. Maybe, who knows? Maybe. Yeah, it's also, I think, woke me in league with kind of international finance because it's made socialism look silly. Like all the people that used to be doing real activism, right? I know this, I've seen this in environmental groups. They said, "Oh, we just argue about pronouns. We don't actually get anything done." Yeah, the absolute ridiculousness of the genderbread man or the person who identifies as a wolf or whatever, but other kid, and that's really a thing. It's huge amongst the kids. Huge. I know one kid here who identifies as a cat. A Ukrainian refugee mum is so unimpressed with what our school system has done to this poor kid. Anyway, yeah, it's so ridiculous that it's made people go, well, any kind of class consciousness must be silly. But with this chap here, bottom right, it sort of keeps coming out, doesn't it? It kind of keeps coming out in funny ways. People have cheered this guy on. I do not encourage violence against CEOs. Tell you what, though, I can understand it. I can understand why people might have rage against American insurance for healthcare, for example. I can understand people have rage against various corporations in the UK too. I can understand that, even if I don't encourage violence. And it's made woke has just made socialism look silly. So yeah, at this point, it's kind of job done. Job done. No one believes in the left anymore. I can't be part of the left because of the woke stuff anymore. It's been years now. Does it pass the life test? No, it destroys life. It destroys life. It says there's no God, there's only money. It cuts you off from yourself, right? Because its job is to impose fake needs rather than you be actually in touch with your real needs. Destroys all bonds of community. That's part of how it works. The isolated consumer unit, and it chops down all the trees. It pollutes the rivers and the air. So it's absolutely a death cult. There's no doubt about that. It destroys life on every level, and I'm kind of tired of people on the right saying, "Oh yeah, like, like I'm just pro-capitalism no matter what of all forms." So hang on a minute, we might want to be a bit careful with some forms at least. So is capitalism evil, right? It kind of comes up to our last one we're coming up to. Have we been conquered? Yes, we have. Yeah, there's a foreign military presence. The American empire literally has bases in Britain. Loss of sovereignty. The leadership is bought and paid for. We are, by almost by definition, with this one, economically exploited. They own the law courts. They impose the culture through the media. International condemnation. Well, from places that are outside of the money system. There's not many of them left, but there are some. The Irans and North Koreas, and suppression of resistance. Absolutely, this is the one that's really going to get me in trouble, guys. Yeah, they might use the first two groups, but this is the group who are using those first two groups, that weird unholy marriage of woke and Islam that this group uses for their own ends. Yes, it's a cult. Yes, it's a death cult. Yes, we are occupied by transnationals. Absolutely. Oh, well, it's been nice knowing you guys. What's left? Is the world just run by evil? That's one that is tough to think about. Maybe there's just demons running the world. I used to think this was ridiculous. Wait, hang on. It's time for my tinfoil hat. There we go. Um, Most people watching this are either going to think they're religious guys who are going to look at this and go, "This is totally obviously true. We're definitely in a war with the enemy, and the earth is his kingdom. He's money and power is his kingdom, and we are in a daily war." Or they're just gonna go, "This is bizarre." I can't wear that. Sorry. They're gonna find that the idea of modernity has conditioned us all to think that the idea of sort of evil, good and evil, there's no good, no bad. It's conditioned us to think that there's no spiritual warfare. It's an odd idea. Yeah? It's conditioned us to think that the idea of evil is just bizarre. It's just silly. It's childish. So let's see. I mean, this is, we come through a sort of cultural evolution. Pre-moderns all believed in good and evil, but then we got rid of that. It's all in the Enlightenment. Good blag on the name, guys. Said that it's all science. There's only stuff. There's only materialism. So how can there be good and bad and morality? And then post-modernity sort of said, well, there's no good, no bad at all. There's not even any truth. It's all a mess. So of course, given the modernity and post-modernity are the leading cultural forces, that's our world has been built on modernism for 300 years and post-modernity for at least 50 years. This is even hard to imagine for us, right? Though for all our ancestors, it would have been totally normal. Interesting, the stage of development above postmodern, we can say meta-modern or integral, the idea of religion, of spirituality, of good and evil comes back. So, before we get into it, some people say there's no evil, it's just a banal bureaucracy. If you look at the final solution, for example, it's just bureaucrats, really. The same with the Soviet Union. They had quotas of how many kulaks had to be killed or whatever. And some people say the civil service went from running the British Empire to running its own country. And it's just a sort of managerial elite. And if you look at immigration, for example, it's just quicker to process someone by saying yes to coming in the country than to deny them. There's certain just sort of bureaucratic pressures on accepting people as immigrants. So, there is a banality of bureaucracy. We can say that's part of it, part of it. But let's start here. Does good exist? Do you think there are good things? Well, yes, you do, because you wake up in the morning and by definition, by the way, see his way his elbow bends back there. That means he has low testosterone, which is common amongst men today. You'll see that in girls and young boys. Anyway, does good exist? Yes, because you have to choose something to do with your day, with your time, right? And also just in your heart, you feel this when you see a loving family, for example. There's a glow, there's a warmth. When you're in nature, you know goodness exists. You know that evil feels wrong. Lies are worse than truth. It sucks to lie. If you do lie for, say, work or whatever, you can feel it. It sucks unless you're a total psychopath. Beauty shines, the goodness through life. Like this is the divinity of things is just obvious. So it's almost like I don't have to prove the color red. I don't have to prove that goodness exists. Yeah, it's in my heart. Excuse the Catholic imagery here, but there's a physical somatic resonance of goodness, also cross-culturally virtue is very well agreed cross-culturally. Equally, when we see evil, like if we see torture, for example, I've been around some torture and people that have been tortured, you can't help but just cringe. And when you hear what the SA gangs did, some of the stories, you have a visceral response, like evil exists. You feel it, your body is your brain, you feel it in your whole body. And maybe a sort of lighter example. If you said, "Oh, I don't know this guy, but I'm not accusing this person of anything," but if you said there was a guy who had intimate relationships with goats, you don't know why that's wrong, but you know it's fucking wrong, right? You just go, "Oh no, don't do that." Yeah, there's a taboo there for a reason, and you might not know the reason, but it's just like, nah, stop it, leave the goat alone, mate. Again, I don't know who this guy is, just a random picture. Okay. You see that when you see the ugliness that's been made of Britain, you see that there's something satanic about things that are that ugly. I was just in a restaurant tonight and they were playing banal pop music, and there's so much good music in the world. To hear this banal bullshit, I was offended. I was like spiritually disgusted and offended by this pop music. You know, who was it? Taylor Swift or some shit. I don't know. Yeah, there's no doubt when you look at the disgustingness of the new Sunderland Town Hall, or whatever, you just go, oh, that can't be right. That can't be good. You know, your heart is right here, guys. Equally, when you hear people say, this is my truth, you know, this weird post, who am I to judge? But that is a judgment, right? Moral relativism just leads to evil. Saying there's no good, no truth just leads to bullshit. Saying there's no beauty leads to ugliness. And saying there's no right or wrong just leads to evil. Yeah. So let me tell you, let's ask this, right? I mean, it sounds like, oh, it's conspiracy, you know, an evil takeover, like, you know, Satan's there, you know, what, you know, it sounds kind of ridiculous and bizarre. If there was an evil takeover, if there were such a thing as demons or the devil or, you know, whatever you want to belief system you want to put around it, what would that look like? Yeah, what would it be like? How would it be different from today? Here's what it would, you know, if there was evil overlords. Well, this is my model of the anti-culture, as I call it. Your ego would be at the center of the world. You would be alienated. You'd be dysregulated because you wouldn't be in contact with the natural world, and you'd be nihilistic. Nihilism, nihilism. I don't know how to say it. There's fucking different ways. All this would be destroyed. It would be the breaking of all this, which is what we've seen all the way through from the three different groups, right? It would be the decentering of spirit. It would be disembodiment. It would be disconnection from community, the death of the village. It would be destruction of ecology. This is a view of a healthy person. So if we were being evil, we would destroy all of this. That's what we've been fucking talking about for the last, God, how long has it been? It's the middle of the night by now, the last hour and a half or something. This is what we would see, right? We would see people drug addicted, self-obsessed, and lacking any kind of belief. We would see the raising rates of suicide and drug addiction and despair that we see in the world today. This is what we would see. If there were demons running the world, they would say that, you know, there's only stuff, and then people would give up, and then people become hedonistic, then become addicted, they'd lose their freedom, they'd lose their ethics, they'd lose their health, they would not be fully alive. As someone who's been an addict, I can tell you that's how it ends up. You know? And this is in plain sight. There's actually this principle of telling people you're fooling them. You know? Consent through disclosure. If you, it's almost like, oh yeah, this is a weird satanic principle. Apparently, I'm told. Revelation of the method. If you tell people something is happening, like, you know, there's all these weird signs just in plain sight. Everything, like silly versions, like The Simpsons weirdly predicting the future. I don't know what the fuck's that's about. Letting people know what's going on, letting people know what's going to happen. Like I've been doing Civil War stuff, and it's like, yeah, there's films about Civil War now. There's little things in the media. Even the fact that I'm being algorithmically boosted by the looks of things, despite my radical message, because of Civil War stuff, as far as I can tell. Yeah, it's in plain sight. It's not subtle, guys. It's not subtle at all. Like, at what point would you go? Yeah, yeah, I think there's demons running the world. What would that take? I mean, that's a good test, actually. If someone's rational, it's like, what would it take for you to believe or not believe this? I mean, when I see what's been done with sexuality, I was at a party the other day. It was like Guardian reading liberals, and their kids were like playing with like sex toys that have been left around and stuff like gimp masks. I was like, this is not okay. You know, some sort of weird middle-aged creepy man comes into this party in underwear, and they say, "Oh, do you want to do some shibari?" I'm like, "No, I'm good, thanks. Me and my girlfriend are going home to have normal person sex." It's just odd, you know, the prostituting of our young people. I've been massively promiscuous in my life because I was educated by this materialistic satanic system to just think that sex is a toy, and it really got me in spiritual trouble. It got me in all kinds of trouble. You know, I don't have AIDS, but I probably fucking deserve it by this point, you know. It's all kinds of trouble. You think the hubs are really doing us good? You think that's good for the minds of young men? I was just hearing yesterday from a parent, this parent was talking to me saying he had to talk to his boy because he thought porn sex was normal sex and it's just not. And, he'd had uncomfortable experiences and upset this girl because he thought that was, it's just a distortion. How can you say this isn't demonic? Even if you like, I'm agnostic, let's say, about it. But I just go at this point, it just looks obvious. In terms of the sexual revolution stuff, by the way, Louise Perry is excellent. Me and my girlfriend are in love with her. Anyway, enough of that. The inversion principle. So this kind of satanic principle of just saying the opposite. This is mad projection you see from the woke. Like I was just arguing with this publisher that cancelled me, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm saying I'm more diverse than you. I'm more equal than you. I'm more inclusive than you. Yeah, like you actually want the opposite. You want lack of diversity. You want exclusion, not inclusion. Positive discrimination is just racism. That's the opposite. Social justice is unjust. Yeah, you see the state kind of talking about peace by going to, sending troops to Ukraine or whatever. And it's like, no, that is not peace. We need more cameras so we're more free. Conspiracy, misinformation again, right? It's like, what are you talking about? What misinformation? What are you talking about? Who says what's misinformation? So, by the way, psychopaths do around the world. So, I worked for a major bank, one of these, I won't say which one, years ago, doing a job. I do corporate training sometimes, and they fully admitted to me they have personality tests for certain positions, and being a psychopath is a plus. If they find out someone's a psychopath for various economic positions, big, high level financial positions, that is a plus for them. Equally, I work with this school that's right in the centre, the biggest, the one of the top fee paying schools in central London. And the kids were just cold, man. The teachers were good, but the kids were just like little lizards. And I was like, what's wrong with these kids? And I realized, oh, they're all the sons and daughters. There's all the sons of bankers and lawyers from central London. When we think that like aliens have invaded, the aliens have long ago invaded, right? Literally or figuratively. We could look at this like as a sort of the vampire kind of mythology, if you want. You can take it on that level. Yeah. We are farmed by psychopaths for profit. Farmed by psychopaths for profit. It's been nice knowing you. All right. I mean, this is our supposed elites, right? Like, when are the files going to be released? Right? We know that various members of the royal family, the financial elites, the media elites, pop stars, they're things that are just on record now, on record. Getting piggy with it. Ah, child sacrifice. Again, now we're looking at abortion numbers in the UK. Maybe literally, I've certainly heard as a trauma psychologist, I've heard from other trauma psychologists who have been around, people that have been victims of various royal families, various well-known families, and I've said, as trauma psychologists have, been trying to pick up the pieces for people who were shared around in disgusted ways. And abortion it's just huge. I mean, we're looking at 250,000 in the UK per year, and three times that, I believe, in the US. And the idea that it's health care. I mean, look at this child. This is killing a child. Maybe under the most extreme conditions you can justify this, but shouting about it like they were in Ireland, like really celebrating it, like it's women's rights to, you're not a woman, you're not a real feminist unless you kill kids. Strange idea. How did that happen? Strange idea. I mean, even if you look at, what's happened with the major churches, there are exceptions, right? I think, at this point, I look at that and go, that's the seat of the Pope, really? Or the child abuse in the Catholic Church. Now, there are exceptions. I happen to know, for example, this the person in Ukraine who's responsible for child protection in the Ukrainian church is a nun friend of mine, believe it or not. It's true, Sister Theodora. If you're out there, love you. And I know, she's absolutely keen that none of that happens in her church. There's definitely places that are better than others, countries and parishes, and there's more conservative priests like this one top right. Because, excuse me, but the Church of England is too far gone, definitely as well. Rainbow flags in churches. There's a trans vicar in my local 1,000-year-old church. I just feel sorry for all the old people that are there that have had it put upon them. As soon as you walk into the church, the first thing you see is a leaflet saying, with a rainbow flag on it, saying, "Everyone welcome." Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, does it pass the humor test? Maybe we might give it that one. There's a sort of, I think they're laughing at us rather than with us. Reality denial, yeah, it's all about reality denial. It's making people deny reality. That's where the power comes from. You can look up Gnosticism, by the way, which is related to some of this stuff, and it's related to a lot of the woke stuff as well. James Lindsay talks about that. So reality denial, and it's absolutely anti-life. I don't think I need to say more at this point. So have we been conquered? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how we'd apply this one, how apply these criteria. I mean, death definitely is there, but in terms of this one, not sure, not sure. So death conquered. It's hard to know by the normal criteria. I'd say it's likely, just as a sort of rational guy looking at all the stuff that I see. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said so. I would have said this is a conspiracy theory. I would have said, "What are you talking about?" But after Epstein, after Diddy, after all these things that have come out, the more I look at it, the more I go, something's not right. Something's not right here. And these are dark days. Whether the main force out of the four is the last one evil, or whether it's just the money power with bureaucracy at work, maybe. I think those first two that are kind of occupying us work for that third or fourth one. And that is an unpalatable conclusion that we are occupied. It's not the conclusion I want to come to. I would have rather said, no, everything's all right, but it doesn't look that way, does it? Let's be honest. By who? So this is why these people. This is by who? The neo-Marxists, by the lizard people, by the Satanists. I mean, it seems silly, but maybe mythology speaks to us in ways that are not obvious. What should the response to an occupation be? Now, again, I am not encouraging any form of illegality or violence. I'd say that, I'd say it clearly. Um, but what is the moral response? If aliens invaded, we will have this fantasy we would fight the aliens, right? Yeah, people are already hurting our kids. Maybe it's time for some sort of response. What is our ethical duty? If we were, when the Americans and us Brits invaded Iraq, I can understand people that live there fighting back. I understand my Ukrainian friends fighting back the invasion. I understand it. Whatever your politics are, I think we can all understand that. If you were in France, well, the mid 20th century Germans occupied it. Wouldn't you understand? Isn't there some right to self-defense, at least? That's not violence, self-defense. People are hurting your children. When do legalities become illegal? When are orders illegal orders? Soldiers will say, hey, these are illegal orders, we shouldn't follow them. When will the police stop following illegal orders? When there's a knock on my door from the police, saying, hey, you've made an illegal YouTube video, you've done a hate crime. I hope one day a policeman says, you know what, I won't do that. That is not a good use of my time. Are we just appeasing them like Clement Attlee up until this point? What is legitimate resistance? We always cheer for the resistance, in Terminator and the Matrix and Star Wars and even bloody Candice Evernip, whatever her name is. We cheer for the resistance, right? Like it was good, but it's like, what's the resistance of our lives? Can we ask that question? I think it needs asking. Is there a legitimate resistance? I am against violence. I'm not encouraging violence. But what would an actual British resistance look like? Probably not like these ladies here on the left from France who are quite appealing, I would say. Maybe more like Dad's Army. I don't know. I'm not encouraging this. I'm just saying, what might that look like if we are occupied? Dare I say that? 95% of you guys agree. 95%. I'm like, what the hell? Why is no one saying this? Very uncomfortable question then is what is a traitor or a collaborator? Yeah. What is that? Like Patan there from France, or this guy from 300, Judas, maybe he was fulfilling the Lord's work, who knows? There is still the death penalty, by the way, for traitors in the UK. I'm not suggesting it. I actually disagree personally with the death penalty, but it does still exist. It does still exist. So it's an unpalatable conclusion, right? We are occupied by some combination of these four. If you think I've missed anything out, let me know. Maybe I just did a racism. So when this comes up in court, I want to say this for a fact. I'm not encouraging violence or illegal activity of any kind anyway. I put it in writing. I can't make it any clearer. I'm not spreading lies. I think everything in here is true that I've spread, that I've shared here. If you think something is untrue, let me know, correct me. People might get offended by this, but so what? Yeah. And if someone says, oh, you've offended my religion, what does that mean? He's offended. That doesn't mean a thing. I'm offended by you being offended. I'm offended by the pop music I heard earlier. It doesn't mean anything. And you got to have a hobby, right? Okay, if you made it this far, I think this is the longest one yet. So Throb Club in the comments if you've made it all the way. I am amazed. By the way, it's late at night now. I'm pretty tired. This is probably my most rambling one. If you made it this far, fucking well done. I barely have. I'm not deleting any comments, but YouTube is. I will respond to every comment that isn't abusive or unpleasant. You can find me on X if you want to get in touch privately. I'm now in touch with a few YouTubers in this space. I'd love to be in touch with more to compare notes. Yeah, that's going well actually. So if you're on YouTube and you're in this space in any way, do get in touch, please. I appreciate it. Uh, I'm actually leaving the country in a few days, so I'm going to have to come back. So I might get arrested at the airport on the way back. And if the channel gets closed down, we've made like $300 in money. Wow, that's enough for the Chinese I had tonight. Just about. So long and thanks for all the fish, I'll say. If that is the end of this ride, we shall see. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.